We've heard a lot about cases, English Montreal School Board, of course, still in a battle with the Quebec government over school boards, who gets to control what, winning in court. And then, of course, the government choosing to appeal the last decision, the most recent one. Well, yesterday was the final hearing in the government's appeal of a Quebec Superior Court ruling that found the province's plan to replace school boards with school service centers, at least on the English side, was unconstitutional. So let's get the latest on this. Marion Sandilands is a lawyer representing the Quebec Community Groups Network, involved in this as well. Marion, thank you for being here, and bring us up to date. What did happen?
Thanks for having me, Aaron. So just to backtrack, this Bill 40 was passed in 2019. This is pre-pandemic, and that's the bill that changes school boards to school service centers. And Bill 40 put in a special sort of halfway measure for the English school boards, but it would severely limit things like who could run for commissioners. And it also really limited what the school service centers actually do. It put a lot more power in the minister's hands. So in 2019 and 2020, the Quebec English School Boards Association, on behalf of all 9 school boards, they launched a constitutional challenge to Bill 40. And as you said, that challenge was successful before the Superior Court, and then Quebec appealed. And so this week, the Quebec Court of Appeal heard the appeal by Quebec.
Okay, and where does it go from here? Because again, as I mentioned, and as you just said, we've been dealing with this now for the past almost 5 years. So how does this proceed? What's next?
That's right. Yeah. So early in the proceeding, the Quebec English School Boards got a stay of Bill 40, which means Bill 40 is not in effect right now in the English system. That doesn't change. That continues because they were successful at the Superior Court. So right now, the Quebec Court of Appeal has heard the appeal. Now they've taken it under reserve, which means they're going to go back and do some homework and write a judgment. And so in a few months' time, we expect to get their judgment. And they will either say, yes, the trial judge got it right, and Bill 40 was unconstitutional and won't go into effect in the English boards, or they'll say, no, the trial judge got it wrong, and Bill 40 should come into effect in the English system.
And, okay, based on whatever decision does come down, is that, in fact, the end of it?
Well, this is the kind of case that might finally end up at the Supreme Court in a couple of years, so we'll have to see how it unfolds.
Okay. By the way, the other part of this question, I guess, would be, and I understand the part about the Supreme Court, along with those challenges that exist now to Bill 21 and 96, if this was a win, right, for the English system, for the school boards here, as we're discussing, you know, the way it was before the rules changed in 2019, would the Quebec government have leave to do anything else beyond that? Can they challenge it again in another court?
So if Quebec loses this appeal here at the Quebec Court of Appeal, they can apply to the Supreme Court to have the Supreme Court hear it. The Supreme Court can choose whether or not to hear it.
Right.
So it could be the Quebec Court of Appeal could be the final word. Similarly, if the school boards lose at the Quebec Court of Appeal, they can ask the Supreme Court to hear the appeal. But again, they may or may not. The Supreme Court may or may not do that. So the Quebec Court of Appeal could be the last word, or it could go up to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
The other thing the Quebec legislature can do, of course, is if they lose at the Quebec Court of Appeal, they can change the legislation. They can draft new legislation that complies with the Constitution if the current law is found to be unconstitutional. They can always respond with something better.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing by that token they could try to involve a notwithstanding clause or not?
Actually, they can't, Aaron, because Section 23 of the Charter, which is the provision this was brought under, which is the provision to do with minority language education rights, Section 23 can't be overridden by Section 33. So they can't use the notwithstanding clause here. There's no question about that.
Well, there's some potential good news anyway. Okay.
Indeed.
Marion, I thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So that's the legal end of it, if you will. Joe Ortona, who is the chair of the EMSB and, of course, president of the Quebec English School Boards Association, is on the line. Joe, I don't want to talk to you about the legal ramifications. I think Marion did a pretty good job of explaining that. I want to talk to you about you being singled out by the minister, Simon Jolin Barrette, saying, you know what, you're wasting money, parents' money, by challenging this in court. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Secondly, I think he's projecting, and maybe even gaslighting, because any case where the Quebec government is involves taxpayer money, And when we talk about Bill 40 specifically, we're actually fundraising, so we're getting private donors to give us money to help fund the challenge. So we're actually using less taxpayer money as a result. So, I think the government should take a look at what they're doing before they criticize the other people.
So as Marion mentioned in this sort of interview that we just completed here, when this thing eventually gets settled, now nothing changes for you because, the waiver you got, if you will, the first time around is still in effect. Do you have an idea of how long this goes on before we can finally lay this to rest?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's going to take the time that it's going to take in order for the judges to do all of their analysis. And, I don't want to pronounce myself on that because it's really difficult to say. It's certainly going to take several months. It could be 6, could be 8, could be 4. We really don't know.
You tired of this, Joe?
Tired of having to fight, yes. Tired of waiting for a decision because that's pretty nerve-wracking. Yes, I'll admit so. But I feel less tired when we get positive results and we're actually winning, and that goes a long way. And it's very satisfying, not just for me, but for the entire community. And it makes it all worthwhile.
You brought up parents, and obviously when the minister said about this wasting money, and I'm glad you pointed it out that it's coming from donations, you hear from parents, I'm guessing, on a regular basis. I know typically when we talk about school board elections, last time around that happened, we always complain about the fact that people don't go out to vote, but you can complain all year and then try to do nothing about it. Do you hear from parents now? Do you get sort of support from parents for what you're doing in this case?
Sure, all the time. Parents aren't happy that we have to find ourselves constantly in litigation with the government of Quebec. The ideal scenario would be that everybody gets along and that you're able to have constructive dialogue with people in the ministry, for the betterment of education and for what's in the best interest of the kids. And that still happens for the most part, but we do have these very important ideological differences about, what our rights are and what the government's obligations are to us because of the constitutional rights that we have. And, if you don't fight them when they violate those rights, you're going to wind up losing them. So parents aren't pleased about the situation, but they understand that these challenges are important in the long run. And that's why they're overwhelmingly supportive of challenges like Bill 40, Bill 21, and Bill 96.
Joe, we're going to leave it there. I will tell you, I took heart, and as I said at the end of the interview, that at least if and when the government loses this thing, at least they can't invoke the notwithstanding clause. So for people who didn't understand that, at least we'll take that, as I said, as a positive.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Joe, I thank you. I appreciate it. Take good care.
Thank you.
You bet. Joe Ortona, chair of the English Montreal School Board, and we'll see where this decision goes.